Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I'm Andrea Rosman, your webinar host from Main Street ROI. We are really excited to be having another of our Master Your Marketing series webinars where we bring together leaders in the digital marketing world to bring you great content focused on ways you can grow your business. This series is sponsored by all of our partners, Active Demand, AdRoll, SpyFu, WooRank, AddThis, Optimizer, and iContact. Lots of great partners together. For today's webinar, we're excited to welcome Niels de Moor, co-founder and CTO of WooRank, and Andrea Volpini, co-founder and CEO of WordLift. This presentation is going to be about 40 to 45 minutes so that we can leave plenty of time at the end for a live Q&A session. Please feel free to type any questions you have in the Q&A box along the way, and we will address them at the end of the webinar. As always, today's webinar will be recorded, and we'll send out a replay video along with the PDF slides to everyone who's signed up. So if you get a phone call or you're pulled away for work, don't worry, you're not going to miss a thing. With that, I will turn the webinar over to Niels and Andrea so they can get started.
All right, let's get started. Yes, today we are going to talk about voice search and all the different techniques that you can use for making your website talk. My name is Andrea Volpini, and on the other side of the line, we have Niels de Moor. I am a co-founder and CEO of WordLift, and Niels is a co-founder and CTO of WooRank. This presentation really starts with one single important message, and the message is brought to you by Confucius, and it's about really the meaning of the content, behind the content. If we get the meaning of the content that we're writing online, then we are helping machine understand, what our content and what our business value are. And so really, we will go through different examples, but at the real basis of this presentation, there is the message of, structuring content and adding a meaning that computers can understand. Our job, Niels and I, is to help a website owner expand their growth and their business with organic, sustainable growth. What you see here is a graph of one of the website of our client, and in comparison with similar websites in the same sectors, and the lift in traffic that we brought by using semantic web technologies and innovation that helped them get into the new wave of voice search and conversational interfaces and all the great stuff that we're going to see today. We love experimenting with different technologies. And we are deeply involved in using artificial intelligence and semantic web technology to make the content of our client as accessible as possible across multiple devices. What you see here is really one of the first experiments that I did now a while ago by creating a first application for the Google Assistant. And this is the number of interaction that I was able to achieve, so 630 unique users from Google Assistant application that was launched as really as an experiment. And that gave me a sign of, how strong is today, the interest around conversational devices and personal assistant such as the Google Assistant and Alexa. And a lot of these webinars are really about, different things that you can do. My and Niels' way of doing it is always to try to experiment something new. So I hope that everything will work perfectly. But I mean, the starting of this webinar for me was like a new experiment that I did on our website, on the WordLift website, of creating a content and making sure that Google was able to pick it up with the Google Assistant in such a way that I could ask to the assistant something specific about my site. So I will quickly show you a video about this interaction, and then we will get into what's behind the video that we're going to see. So.
WordLift, what is structured data? According to WordLift, a relational database is an example of structured data. Tables are linked using unique IDs, and a query language like SQL is used to interact with the data. Structured data is the best way for computers to interact with information.
And it's good, this video, because it also introduces the key topic behind voice search and behind personal assistant. That is really the way that we construct the metadata that describe the content to the search engine crawlers and to the personal assistant. So in this example, I am asking to the Google Assistant using my voice and the brand of my website, okay, WordLift, what is structured data? And Google is not only able to understand that WordLift is actually, wordlift.io website, but is able to pick up a specific concept that I'm asking for, and it renders it on the screen with a card that looks similar to the feature snippet that we see on the search results. And then it provides a voice response to the query. So we will see different ways of getting into voice search and going into the Google Assistant. But let's kind of get a little bit of structure, so that we can bring home an understanding of how this can be implemented on your own properties and your own website. So in order to make your content easy to be found by users of the Google Assistant, there are really three ways that you can follow. And in the example that we just saw, I started with something as basic as using structured data markup. And this is, again, a way of adding metadata that describes the content, using accelerated mobile pages, a technology to make the site run faster. And by doing so, we are already able to get into a voice response of the Google Assistant, and this somehow has a similar effect on a traditional mobile search or a voice search. Because of course there are different ways of interacting with Google using our voice. We can interact with Google using voice search, or we can interact with Google using a personal digital assistant, and in this specific case, the Google Assistant itself. Now, if you want to move a step further, and you might have already received a message from the Google Search Console, you might get the opportunity, or you can do it directly, to claim a directory page within the Google Action directory. This is really a directory of application and content that the Google Assistant is capable of rendering. And by creating your personal page about your Google Action, you are capable of conquering and securing your brand across this new wave of devices. And the third step, once you have created content with structured data, applied accelerated mobile pages, and claimed your directory page on the Google Action directory, the third thing that you can do is really get into a more sophisticated implementation and start coding for what is called the Google Action. This is really an application inside the Google Assistant that allows you to render your content and to create conversational user experiences. We will mostly focus the attention on this webinar on really the step one, which is the most immediate way of getting into this new wave of voice search and virtual assistants. I'm just going to now hand it over a little bit to Niels to understand more about semantic markup and who is using structured data on the web. Niels, you can take it from here.
Yeah, can you make me presenter?
Yes, that's absolutely right. All right. There you go.
All right. So yeah, indeed, I will dedicate a small part about semantic markup. So that was the good part in the previous slide, the first step to get all of this going. And yeah, semantic markup. Let's just have a quick look at the current state of semantic markup on the internet and how the internet is using those things. So just looking at our own data, if you don't know, WooRank is a tool that acquires lots of data in the context of a given website. And over the years, we've acquired data about millions of websites. And just diving into those, mining in that data, we see that about 40%, 41% to be exact, of websites is using metadata. But that's maybe a bit too high level. So if we dive, or if we look at another company, or rather a more academic approach to diving into the internet, looking at all the data that's been acquired, there's an organization called Web Data Commons. It's a website you can just go to, and every year they bring out, or they do their research, and they bring out information, aggregated information about how structured data is being used, what types are being used, how many websites are using them, the top websites using structured data, and all of that. Now there's lots of data, and as you can see on this slide, graphs, data, lists. But I think most importantly, to summarize all of this, looking at their a bit high level at their data. So they crawled about 30 million websites, or let's say 25 million in 2017. It was a bit more in 2016, but that had to do with some cleanup they did, and they wanted to start from a cleaner corpus of data. So that's why they went back to 25. But more importantly, the right-hand side of this graph shows how many domains, so how many websites are using structured data. And the interesting thing here that we can see is that year over year, this number is growing. So in a way, that's a good thing. So it's about 26%, almost 27% year over year growth of websites, domains that are using structured data. Now, it's not only about quantity, of course. So we shouldn't just all be adding structured data to our website just at random. Quality is, of course, key in this case, and diversity of the structured data we use. So, and quality is something, of course, us as website owners, we need to guard the quality of the structured data we add to our web pages and make sure it's relevant, it's up to date. The structured data is always showing up. So we're going to need tools to help us guard that quality. And that's why at WooRank we started, it's still in beta now, but we started introducing some features in our tool to give you a view, an X-ray view on the structured data on your website. And I'm going to give a real quick demo of that. So that's showing up. Okay, great. I logged into WooRank and I went into my project for WordLift. So Andrea, I'm gonna review your website. So these are our general reviews, but in the context of this webinar, the most important part here is our site crawl. So opening that up. So what we do in our site crawl is, well, as the name says, we're going to crawl your website, and then we're going to aggregate a bunch of information about your website and the pages within your website. And more importantly, we're also going to alert and warn you on certain errors, certain things that go wrong, or should be getting some attention on your website. So for instance, here you can see that looking at all the title tags throughout your website, there's pages missing title tags, there are pages that have a too long or too short title tag, and so on and so forth. And we do that for a bunch of on-page stuff. And so here at the very right-hand side, we have a new tab that looks at schema.org. So this is the structured data I was talking about, and Andrea a bit later in the webinar will dive deeper in what exactly schema.org is. But for the sake of demo, this is what we will be looking at right now. So this table will show all the structured data, the schema.org structured data that we could find on pages throughout your website. And this is, as I said, yeah, we need to guard the quality, see if everything is working. And this is, yeah, a tool that we're offering to see at this very moment. As you can see on the website, there's 430 pages annotated with structured data. Of course, that's an absolute number. Now, when I want to dive deeper into this data, I can, for instance, filter on specific pages. So the little video that Andrea showed a little earlier was a question, okay, how is my, or what is structured data? And that was the answer that Google gave was specifically coming from one page. And that page, I'm gonna find the URL back. This one. So I'm gonna filter that here. The page on the blog, and the page was called structured data. So here we can see that on this page, there's a bunch of structured data entities annotated. There's things in there. There's creative work. Again, we dive into that later. But the actual answer that was given by the Google Assistant was on structured data, and we see that entity is annotated on this page. So that was kind of feeding Google to give this particular answer. Now, and this is very much a proof of concept that we've built, but this is very tabular, this information, but this proof of concept that I will show now is a little experiment we've been conducting, and it's rather showing a site crawl more visually in a 3D kind of way, where you can really see all the dots in this graph are your pages and how they are connected together. So it's essentially the exact same data as you can see in all the tables in the previous tool I showed, but this makes it a bit more visual. And so this also helps, for instance, in finding certain clusters of issues or clusters of pages that need to get some attention. For instance, when looking at errors in under D pages, so pages that require a lot of hops for a crawler, but then also a human being to get to that page. You see a cluster of them here. So Andrea, maybe that's something to look at. But again, here we were looking at one particular page, and there's some filtering mechanism over here. So in our site crawl, when we look at our 3D graph, this is the particular page, and this representation, which you won't really get into a table, will show you how this page is connected, what other pages it is linking to, and what pages are linking to it. So this gives you a very detailed view on the state of a page and how people can reach it, how crawlers can reach it, and gives a more visual view on the quality of that page. So as I said, proof of concept. So it's really not built in our tool yet, but if you have interest in testing that, you can drop us an email. Our email addresses are at the end of the slide deck when we finish this webinar. So I'm going back in the slides now. Let me close this up. All right, so that was the demo. Now, so why is all of this important? Of course, the internet, as we know it, is made up out of web pages, and those web pages are all connected to each other through hyperlinks. And for us as a human, from a human perspective, that normally makes sense. Like quick example, you're browsing a Wikipedia page, let's say about Albert Einstein, and they refer to his birthplace. Like if you see that name of that birthplace, it's Ulm, if I remember correctly. For a human, that makes sense. Like that's okay, that's his birthplace. That's a place where he was born. But for computers, for crawlers, that's not always the case. Now, of course, Google is an AI juggernaut, and they do lots of NLP and AI to all the text that are on web pages. But still, for a computer, it's hard to understand the meaning of why a web page is linking to another one. And this is the problem that structured data will try to solve. It's essentially adding another layer to help computers understand why certain entities are connected to each other. So, and to explain that, I'm gonna hand it back over to Andrea. All right.
All right, thanks, Niels. Yes, a lot of information. Pretty exciting to see our website in an X-ray and three-dimensional form. Now, one clear message here is that we are dealing with AI, and artificial intelligence needs data in all different ways. And that's why if we look at voice search, we want to understand, what's driving, this user experience. We want to understand what's behind the machine that is providing, the answer to specific search intent or to specific question. And behind all of this, there is a technological stack called linked data. This is a way that allows me as a human being to transfer my knowledge to a computer. And as I do this with my content, I will be able to get visibility for my brand in the new way. So I will train the computers by publishing data in a standard format, and this standard format is called structured data. It's actually a technology that has been there for quite some time, and it's called linked data. In linked data, we can have information scattered across different websites. So Niels can be described with all the different property, his name, where he was born, the company he works with, and then on a website A, and then there is a relationship between Niels and Andrea, and Andrea is described on another website, with another set of information that a computer can understand. And then again, the birthplace of Andrea is Italy, and so maybe there is a third website where a crawler can get the information and then can start creating the connection between the different pages. So this is the quickest explanation of the way that the structured data really works. And computer use unique identifiers for understanding the meaning of things. So myself as a person, I have maybe my personal web page on my blog, but there is also the data that it's embedded into this web page that it's capable of describing to the AI and to the crawlers more information about myself. And this kind of create a graph of data. And a graph of data was only made possible since the introduction of a linked data vocabulary known as Schema.org. This has been developed by the search engine to have a common way of describing the thing that we have on the web. And it's an amazing opportunity for all of us to communicate with machine. It's really for the first time that a linked data vocabulary, it's something that comes out of the semantic web, has become so popular. And we saw, the annual growth of the structured data in the previous slide with Niels. So Schema.org is really, the vocabulary that enables us to talk with the machine and to tell things about the world, to describe our businesses, to describe our services, and to intercept, all the different intents from the different platforms. It's an open and community driven, so everyone can participate in creating new vocabulary, new extension of the vocabulary, and to describe new things of the world that we live in. This information is encapsulated using different formats. So you can create on your website structured data using microdata. You can use a language called RDFA, or you can use a JSON-LD, so a JSON format for linked data. It's pretty terrific because for the first time we have, the major search engine and the personal assistant that are using a common ontology, a common way of describing the things of the world. And it's not just Google or Bing, but it's also the ontology behind Alexa. It's pretty much based upon the schema.org vocabulary. So the more you're capable of describing your content using this common language, the more you are able to transfer the information to this new personal assistant. And just to give you an example, there is we saw first example in the video where I had a page and Google was able to recognize that my brand, WordLift, it's providing that page, and that page talks about a specific concept, subject, structured data. Here is another example, okay, and this is what you should see in various form on a Google search if you look for my name. So this is a knowledge graph panel. This is an information that Google has gathered from multiple websites that use structured data and has compiled into his own knowledge base, his own database. And the beauty of it is that when I move into a conversational interface, or when I move back to the Google Assistant and I start making queries like who are the founders of WordLift, you can see myself and my business partner David showing up as a result. So Google is not only capable of understanding who Andrea Volpini is, but it's also capable of understanding the relationship between Andrea Volpini and the company he founded. And then you can dive more into the information that it's available about myself on the Google Knowledge Graph. So you can ask, when was Andrea Volpini born, and then Google will speak and will say, Andrea was born on March 10, 1977, and so on and so forth. So how this can happen? Really, it's all based on publishing and connecting data, because the AI needs data. And the way that we do this is by creating the structured data and publishing on multiple websites. So this is, to give you an example, is an overview of how the entity that described Andrea Volpini, myself, it's showing up in Wikidata. Wikidata is one of these very large repository of data created by the Wikimedia Foundation. Imagine it as one of the largest public databases out there. And you can see that out of these databases, there are several information that help a computer understand that. For instance, my nickname on social network is branding. If I move forward and I start looking at the data that Wikidata has to describe myself, I can see that there is a link between the information in Wikidata and the information coming out of my website. So I am publishing structured data. This structured data is linked to other data, and a computer or a personal assistant is capable of scouting for this information, compiling this information, verifying the validity of this information by cross-checking the sources, and then creating entities into its knowledge base. And from these entities, I get to be featured in the search, but I also get to be featured in the Google Assistant. And there is a lot of different data sources that are connected and that a computer can access. So what you see here is the number of entities that we are letting our user create with our tool, and how these concepts are connected with other data sources, Wikidata or DBpedia or GeoNames or Freebase, and this is exactly where the personal digital assistant are sourcing the information for providing answer to the users. So let's start looking at a little bit the takeaways of all of these and understanding how this can be turned into practice. So first of all, the SEO industry is entering in a pivotal change, and that's due to different factors. Among all, the fact that people are interacting with information using this personal assistant, and Google is more and more capable with the knowledge graph of providing answer directly to the search intent. This makes it very easy, if you're trying to provide the answer from your web page, And if your web page is not, providing enough information for Google to be able to understand that that's the proper answer for that query. Of course, it's not just about structured data. We saw already in the beginning of the presentation the importance of having, a very fast-performing website, and how a technology such as AMP can help you and make the user experience easier on mobile devices. So speed is a crucial factor. Hyper-targeted content, it's another crucial factor. We will get into this and see exactly what does this mean. But just to bring it to you at this level, we have to make sure that we are providing specific answer to the searcher that we are looking at. In-depth search optimization, the way that the search engine are presenting information is very rich, and there are so many different ways that we can, find visibility for a brand. And of course, publishing your own data, creating your own knowledge graph, it's one of the most important things that you can do to stand out in search and to help, this new AI understand, what is your business about, and what are you good at writing, what are the type of answers that you bring, and so on and so forth. So these are really, the crucial steps. So structured data is growing very fast. We saw it. Traditional SEO opportunities in terms of, links out of keywords are shrinking, and that's also because the behavior of the consumer are changing. A lot of people are interacting with mobile devices, and we know exactly that mobile is about information that matter, contextual information that helps us at that specific moment. And for the first time, it's very simple to prove that using structured data, we can get an advantage in terms of search engine visibility. And all of this connects back to the fact that voice search is becoming phenomenally important in 2018, and it will be even more in 2019. Just to give you a number, there are 500 million devices that support the Google Assistant and that are capable of providing the answers to the question that we saw. So there is less opportunity in traditional organic, so there are less clicks, and that's for the first time. A very interesting research by Jamshot is showing the fact that in the US the search that results in no clicks are growing, and that's of course particularly true on mobile rather than on desktop, as you can see. But as all of this is happening, there are other great things happening, such as the so-called feature snippet. This is for instance one other entity, one other page in our website, and how as soon as this became a feature snippet, we were able to see an uptake in number of pages. And you can see also kind of a interesting factor of impression going up and clicks going down, because I suspect that there is some voice search behind this, because I know that I can ask this to my Google Assistant, my Google Home device, and I will get the answer from my website. So structured data does have an effect, not only when we think about enriching the result on the SERP, but it's always, it's been proven also by a recent study that it's always helping, the traffic improve, because of course it's providing information to the search engine that are very valuable for, understanding exactly if your content is matching the intent of the user. Very actionable insight. Getting into a feature snippet will, most likely 40% of the time at least convert into a voice search answer. So a lot of the time that we have, we succeed in getting featured on the Google search, then there is a good chance that these will also get into the Google Home and the Google Assistant, much like the example that we saw at the beginning of this presentation about structured data. So get this feature snippet, and to get this feature snippet, you have to have data behind, the content that you're writing. Second insight. Remember that the more you publish data, the more this data can be interlinked, and the more Google and Bing and Amazon are capable of creating, and enriching their knowledge bases. So a Google Assistant will always prefer, when the information is coming from its own knowledge graph. So no matter, what you publish about Andrea Volpini today, the information about Andrea Volpini will always come from the Google Knowledge Graph. So it's crucial to get into the Google Knowledge Graph. And to get into the Google Knowledge Graph, you have to publish data. Long story short. You also have to create content that respond to an informational needs. Specifically in voice and in conversational interaction, you want to get to the point, and you want to do it with short answers that are grammatically correct, and that, yes, you can pronunciate correctly. So test it, read it aloud, make sure that they sound right, and not only syntactically, but also in terms of elocution and pronunciation. So feature snippet and knowledge graph panel. These are the two key entry points for voice search. There is another one, quite immediate, if for those of you that are in the news and media sector, especially in the US, Google is testing a specific markup, so a specific form of structured data that is called Speakable Schema Markup. And this is a markup that allows you to say to the personal assistant, hey, this is the paragraph that I want you to read from this article. So this is a really an exciting opportunity. We're running some tests with some of our clients, and it's working quite well. So if you ask, for instance, read me the latest news from CNN, you will see this interaction, and when you will get to the further step of the interaction, Google will rely on the information that it's contained in the structured data behind this article. There's a lot of value in creating this data, and this data is not just about, of course, creating your entity in the graph, but this data is also enabling, more qualified traffic on your site. And this is just one of the different patents that Google has recently published that explain how structured data is used for creating, synthetic queries. These are queries that the search engine creates in order for a searcher to get the best possible results for a query. So sometimes we say, for instance, CEO word lift, and Google will convert, using the structured data and the information in its knowledge graph, the query into Andrea Volpini, because if it search for Andrea Volpini, we'll get more information than if it search for the CEO of word lift. So again, publishing data allows a richer interaction with your content. I will give you a very quick demo of the data behind the web page that it was rendered by the assistant. So this is a regular web page on WordPress, and you can see it here. Again, and right on the right side of the WordPress editor, you can see the plugin that we have created that is adding a set of entities that allows you to tell to the search engine, hey, this page about structured data, it's talking about JSON-LD, it's talking about something that has to do with Google, it's talking about semantic web, it's talking about Yandex and Bing, and so on and so forth. So this is, imagine it as a tagging system. But it's extremely powerful because as I am doing this tagging, as I am creating this concept, I am actually publishing my own knowledge graph. And Google is capable of crawling this information. So behind that web page that we see, there is a lot of data that Google can use to understand, hey, this is really the structured data that that query is looking for. And we saw the structure of the site from the three-dimensional crawl of shown by Niels of WooRank, but here we see the data that it's provided to the search engine, and how this data is also interlinked with other data. Because as you can see, the page talks about Google, and then I can start exploring this, and this is available on other databases that Google knows. And so there is a lot of things that a computer can do and an AI can do with all of these data. And the same technology is working also outside of WordPress. So this is just a very simple example of the what we call the WordLift Cloud. and how the same concept, the same way of tagging is also available outside of WordPress. So main goal for this is really to get the information right into the hands of Google and let the machine understand what our content is about. This is the Google Structured Data Testing tool, and this is a little bit of an overview, another overview of the data that it's behind that page that we saw render in the first example. So back to us, we are getting closer to the conclusion of this presentation. And I'm sending over the control to Niels to understand what other factors are important in achieving these results. All right, Niels, back to you.
All right, thanks, Andrea. Sharing my slides again. I'm probably gonna state the obvious here, but there's of course a bunch of opportunities as SEOs that we are already doing, but that can be very beneficial to voice search too. And one of that is the page load time, of course. We know that Google is very bullish on this. So earlier this year, they made a big announcement. I think it was around January, where they put a lot of emphasis on page speed, and that now it will not only be used on the desktop search, but will also have a big impact on mobile search. Now, there wasn't a word in this about voice assistants or voice answers, but one sentence, the opening sentence, is very important to process here, because they say people want to be able to find answers to their questions as fast as possible. So again, although it didn't mention voice specifically, I think this is the mantra they live by, and I think we can conclude that for voice search, fast pages to be answered will be very important. There was even a let's call it non-scientific piece of research done by Brian from Backlinko, in which he tested a bunch of voice queries and looked at the pages that were read out loud, or parts of the pages that were read out loud as an answer, and saw that those pages on average were loading in 4.6 seconds, while just in general over all the web pages the average is more around 8 to 9 seconds. So it's non-conclusive, but you see that the quicker a page loads, the probability of getting that as an answer in a voice result is probably impacted. Then another thing, well, it's not just about the 10 blue links anymore. The 10 blue links as a Google on the Google search result page. Today, we know, I mean, this is not new, that depending on the type of query you're putting into Google, you can get annotated results, so not just 10 blue links, but images, videos, a straight up answer in the featured snippet, and so on. And even those result pages are getting even more actionable. This is, for instance, an example of a search for a restaurant in Brussels, where without even going to the page or the website of that restaurant, you can make a reservation. So essentially, the Google search result is actually becoming the homepage for that business in a way. And there's probably same is happening to flight searches. You can almost from a Google search query book a flight. We see, or we're probably going to see those things happening more and more. So on this slide, and we pulled that from a site called Bright Edge. It's kind of a non-exhaustive list of all the special types of search results you can get in Google. And this list is growing because they keep adding things to this list. And when we dive a little bit deeper on them, also non-scientific, but these are the types of special results you get from Google that we've seen pop up in voice answers. So non-exhaustive, but these are the ones you should focus on specifically when it comes to being the answer in a voice result. And now for this final part, gonna kick it back to Andrea. There we go.
All right, I'm back. So just to wrap it up, speed is extremely important. Fast-performing website is crucial, and it's not only about speed; it's also about the user experience. Because once again, voice search or personal assistant are at the top of the funnel. So you're getting in, the consumer from, your local pack, as we were seeing in the previous slide. Because for local business, you can get easily into voice search by creating your data and sharing your data from the Google My Business application. And but once the voice search has done the first step, then you still need to entice and engage with the consumer with rich content. You've seen in the examples that I show from the Google Assistant that I'm using a device that has a stream. In most of the cases, yes, of course, there are the Google Home and the Google Assistant audio-only devices, but a lot of these applications are running also with a screen, and so you want the users to make the further step and to jump on the website. So what you have to do is really to design content in order to be machine readable. And to do that, you have to start from the user need. You have to focus on a specific information need, because specifically with voice, you want to nail it down and to understand exactly, what the searcher is looking for, and then kill everything else and just really hit the road. So focus on the content, and that's really the last slide for today's presentation. Optimize your content for feature snippet. Focus on conversational long-tail keywords in different scenarios. We look at the search log from the internal search engine of the site. We look at the mobile search queries from the Google Search Console to understand, what are the long-tail keywords that are that we can capture from our website, and how we can, create a content that really resonates and that can be featured by Google, and that eventually can jump into the Google Assistant. Add structured data. This is so powerful because it helps the AI understand more about you, more about your content, more about your business. Focus on the entities that matter. Focus on the things that really matters for you, and create content that it's readable not only by humans but by machine, using structured data and linked data, a richer way to describe your content. I mean, linked data is really going to be the future of search. Write articles, again, not just answers. Make sure that the experience is rich after the first step. Remember that if you have a recipe, for instance, in structured data, the Google Assistant, if you're using AMP, might already pick you up. Remember that if you have a news content, if you're using a specific markup for news article, the Google Assistant might have already picked you up. But remember that beyond this, beyond the first entry point from voice, there's got to be an experience. So concentrate on creating a rich article. In the beginning, we saw the example of the structured data page and all the different pages that we have around that single page to create an exciting and engaging navigation for the user. Make sure that your content can be read out loud quickly. So make sure that pronunciation is correct, because elocution does matter. A lot of the feature snippets are created because the content, it's fitting a specific informational need of the searcher, but it's also well written. It's grammatically correct, and it's usually between 52, 48, 52, 54 words. 48, 54 words. You have to experiment a little bit. Make sure that you read it aloud in such a way that it doesn't sound funky, but it sounds smooth and simple to be understand. And remember that yes, a lot of this technology do rely on the fact that your site is performing well and it's running AMP, because of course specifically on the Google Assistant on mobile, Google expects the site behind to have AMP. And that's really all that we have for you today. We have a very special offer to jumpstart on this technology and start working with both of our tools, BooRank for assessing the website, WordLift for creating your own knowledge graph. Remember, we have of course here our contact names. Write emails, share your experience, and let's try to get the best out of it. I think we're ready for question and answers.
Great, thank you so much. Let's get through these. Our first question, Marilyn was asking if this is adaptable for hearing impaired users and the TTY users.
That's a great question. I think accessibility is still a crucial aspect of the web. And absolutely yes. And the more you present information about your web pages, the more you're making these web pages accessible. So accessibility is a key component of your marketing strategy. So absolutely.
To what extent is data structuring using schema.org and JSON LD important for a voice optimization strategy?
Well, it's crucial for several factors. We have a lot of studies that now demonstrate the importance of structured data in helping the search engine understand the content and therefore feel comfortable enough to use that content as an answer for a specific query. There's a lot of volatility, especially in feature snippet, and this volatility goes away when I start to mark up my content and to use structured data. So there's a very strong connection. Moreover, structured data is the best way for presenting your entity, your organization, your business, or your content, and get it into the knowledge graph. We have a lot of different examples where people, organizations, companies have got into the Google Knowledge Graph just by publishing and linking structured data. So yes, it's essential.
Eric was asking, what is bounce rate and time on the site?
I think that Niels can get this better than me.
Yeah, of course. Bounce rate is typically defined as the rate of people that come on your web page and then immediately move away from it again. So, for instance, if you come from or someone comes from a Google search into your website by clicking on it and then immediately clicking back again, that's typically count as a bounce. So yeah, the rate of those people versus people still reading your website, going further through your website, that's what the bounce rate is. So the quota between them. Time on site, I guess that speaks for itself. So yeah, how long a session, so someone visiting your website, how long they stick around on your website. That's at least in Google Analytics typically defined as the time on site.
Okay. He also asked, how can voice search be possible for small businesses that aren't going to be nationally or worldwide recognized and have a Wikipedia page?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we have seen recently entities coming into the knowledge graph for small businesses that have just published structured data using WordLift. And I was in the beginning surprised myself, but now it's becoming more and more common that as Google starts to see the same identifiers, the same ID about a specific entity, and maybe this entity is connected with other entities, it just gets it into the knowledge graph. There is actually a new way of representing these entities in the knowledge graph, specifically for Google. The simplest way, I mean, of course, it still remains to have focus on your local SEO efforts and get on the Google My Business and do a great work in describing your business there, because that's automatically into the voice search. So that's the first thing that you have to do. Second thing that you have to do, you have to start publishing structured data in such a way that the search engine can pick it up, either as a feature snippet or as a knowledge graph panel.
And if I can add to that, I think it's also important to make a difference between Wikipedia, which was asked in this question, but the example you showed, Andrea, was about Wikidata, which is closely related, but not the same, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Wikidata is well, it still follows, some of the principle of the Wikimedia community, of the Wikipedia community, but in a way, it's way simpler for once you have created your own data to interlink it with something like Wikidata. So I mean, the rules are slightly different. On Wikipedia, you have to have encyclopedian. You have to be well known for the encyclopedia to let you create an article. In Wikidata, if you are creating data, it's a good point to create a link at least into that.
Jeannie had asked that this was right around the 3D graph slide, and this is done with WooRank or WordLift.
Yeah, this is something we build at WooRank, but yeah, as I said, it's rather beta or a proof of concept. But yeah, just shoot me an email. It's on the slide there. If you're interested, then we can open it up to beta testers and people can start playing with it and tell us if it's useful or not. So yeah, definitely drop me an email.
Okay. Should you have a different schema for each page on your website?
Of course. I mean, in Schema, you can describe the things that you talk about the most. And if you're publishing an article, of course, you have to create the schema for the article. If you're talking about something like conceptual, like structured data, you have to use a different schema. So the way that we do it with WordLift is that we support different classes of schema in order for you to describe a content such as a recipe or a content such as an hotel. And all of these pieces have not only the metadata that describes it, but we also start to see something that is called schema actions that allows the virtual assistants to know what actions can be performed with that content. So maybe there is a a specific call to action for booking an hotel or for making a phone call, and all of these can be described in schema. So yes, I mean, depending on the content type, you want to use different type of schemas. But in the WordLift case, I mean, most of the work is done automatically.
If semantic SEO is all about feeding data to show as snippet in SERP, that results in zero click. What are the benefits that we can get? And could you provide a working example?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't think being featured in the featured snippet is resulting in zero clicks. It is true that Google tries to answer the query as quickly as possible to a user and as summarized as possible, but there is still something for us website owners feeding that featured snippet, a way to optimize the snippet to entice the click afterwards. So by giving away a summarized version of your answer, but still enticing the user to click through and read more about the question they asked and the information they needed. So it's like we're used to optimizing our title tags for click-through rate when we are a boring blue link in Google. The same applies to the featured snippet. So Google will obviously try to keep the user or bring the user as quickly as possible to his or her answer. But there is still something to say to optimize for that click after giving that summarized answer.
Well, let me add. Let me
ahead.
add to this. I think that this is a very important point. Google is eating the data that we provide, and and the more data that we provide, the more it gets it, and it's fighting for controlling this data against Amazon, for instance. We have seen a mutation of an entity for a person that it was featured into Amazon in the beginning, straight into the knowledge graph panel, and then eventually was the Amazon part was replaced with Google Books. So Google is fighting to get the data from us, And the point is that at the end of the day, we want to reach, the audience. And of course, sometimes we do that extra click. Sometimes we don't. I mean, I don't care if there is an extra click when people talk about, my role as a CEO of WordPress. I'm fine. I mean, I'm okay that in some cases Google is providing, an answer that it's consistent and it's valuable enough for whoever is interested in that specific question without providing me with the extra link, as long as I am the one that is providing the information behind. So we have to understand that in the AI first world, the branding, the importance of the brand is way higher than you.
Okay, we have a few more questions. I want to try to get through them. To use claim review, how do we know which sources are trusted?
Niels, want to get this or?
No, probably you go ahead, because this.
Can you repeat it?
Sure. To use claim review, how do we know which sources are trusted?
Well, there is a very interesting initiative called the Trust Project that it's really about understanding what can be considered trusted, and there is a very also other specific interesting initiative which is called Data Commons, which is has been released under the Schema.org website. And it's another huge graph that it's specifically used for checking the validity of information and for checking the trust. So there are different mechanisms that the search engine are using, both Google and Bing, and there is a very good project that you should follow called the Trust Project, where a lot of these heuristics are explained. And then there are data sets, again, that provide, enough information about what is true and what is not.
Okay. Since your page uses templates, some content might be repeated in different pages. Does it matter if these pieces appear in each pages, or is that good?
I am not really afraid about repeating content around as long as there is a structure behind that. It's understandable for the user and it's understandable for the crawler. As we saw in the 3D representation of our site, there are a few pages that I need to work on because they're difficult to reach for the crawler, and I believe they're even harder to reach for the user. Repeating content is not an issue per se, specifically when you start structuring the data that describe the content, the search engine knows what is what.
Okay. In your measurements of voice searches happening on mobile and desktop devices, are home devices like Google Home and Amazon Echo considered mobile or desktop?
There's no, unfortunately, a clear answer to this because Google has promised us to show some information in the new Google Search Console, but still we don't see this right now. What I did see is specifically for the Google action created inside the Google Assistant that the source is marked up as Google. So when you create a Google action, which is again an application inside the Google Assistant, and then you have traffic coming from this Google action into the site, then this will be referred as Google, nor mobile nor desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think interesting to add, and it was on that slide of the crow and the fox. We have seen from measurements that in Google Search Console, sometimes you get an increase in impressions, but the clicks don't follow along. So it's really hard to put your finger on it, but that kind of teaches us that we're probably featured in the featured snippet, and thus also our web page gets the or gives the answer to the voice query. So yeah, it's still unclear to look for in Google Search Console, but indeed, as Andrea said, Google promised to be more open about voice queries.
Okay. Well, we are a little over, so I want to wrap things up, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have further questions, Niels and Andrea have graciously given you their emails right there on the screen, so feel free to send them along. And thanks to both of them for all of this great information. As a reminder, yes, we are definitely sending out a replay of this video and the slides, so please look out for that. And we hope to see everyone next time for our next Master Your Marketing presentation. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.